Samantha. It's great to be here. Wisconsin, Milwaukee is actually the birthplace of my mom. And so I love it here. My relatives are here. My Uncle Dick, who's 90 years old and served in the Navy, is with us today.
Hey.
So it's great to be here.
Hi,
Thank you for your service, Uncle Dick.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good to have
you.
you here tonight, sir.
Senator, before we get started tonight with audience questions, obviously there was a lot of news today. The House Judiciary Committee voted just a couple of hours ago to hold the Attorney General in contempt of Congress. You had some Democrats go as far as suggesting that the Attorney General should be arrested and jailed. Do you agree, first of all, that the Attorney General was in contempt of Congress?
Yes. The Attorney General is the people's lawyer. The Attorney General is the Attorney General of the United States of America, and he should be showing up and answering questions. He came before the Senate Judiciary Committee. I got to ask him questions. I didn't get all the answers I wanted, and I think he had every right to expect that he should be called before the House and he should answer their questions.
But do you think he should go to jail?
I think that he should come before the House. I think you're going to see a lot of pushback and subpoenas, and I think that this administration has to take this seriously. A foreign country invaded our election. They didn't use a missile or they didn't use a tank, but they used computers and they hacked in. We can't let that happen again. That's why we want the Attorney General to answer questions and why we want the former director of the FBI, Director Mueller, to come before the Congress and tell us what happened. They have to answer the people's call.
All right. Senator Klobuchar, some people look at this contempt proceeding and they say, there were times when Eric Holder was also held in contempt, would not turn over any of the documents that Congress requested of him. The IRS, the same situation under the Obama administration. So why are Democrats reacting in such a strong way when they didn't seem to have a problem with those two situations?
Well, you now have hundreds and hundreds of former U.S. attorneys and law enforcement people from across the country, including Republican ones, who have said that this report is real. That there is evidence, the 10 points about obstruction of justice. And I think this is a pretty serious thing when it comes to a foreign country. We want to get answers. The president should be held accountable. And that's what this is about. But by the way, as we know, being in the heartland here, that doesn't mean that we can't do two things at once. And that is push for an economic agenda for the people of this country while making sure that we have someone in the White House, which is why I'm running for president, that will obey the law and tell the truth. I think that's a minimum we should expect.
But we don't want to dwell
president.
on the Mueller report because we don't see you doing it on the campaign trail or answering questions a lot about it. So let's move forward.
All right, let's move to our audience questions. And the first one tonight comes from Matthew Amen. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Klobuchar, for being here in the Midwest with Middle America. We appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be here. And it's also fun to be here on Fox. It feels a little bit like being a Viking fan on Lambeau Field. But I'm ready to go. So,
I knew you'd have one.
Thank you. So my question for you is, how do you plan to keep the economy booming?
How do I plan to keep? I didn't hear the last part.
How do you plan to keep the current economy booming and continuing to grow?
Good question. I think you all know, especially in Wisconsin and in the Midwest, we were hit by that downturn, right? And things were really bad. And we came back as a country. We came back because of the workers, many of whom are in this room. I see some of my friends there from the Teamsters that are joining us today, the workers, the businesses. We came back. And now we're at a time of stability in our country. But to me, this means that we are at a moment in time that we should be governing from opportunity and not from chaos. And that means seizing on the challenges in front of us, right? I'm someone that, I think you shouldn't run for president if you don't have real solutions for the real problems that are facing our country and show how you're going to pay for it. And so I'd start, first of all, with making sure that we have a workforce that works with our economy. And that means a lot of people aren't sharing in the prosperity that we've seen here. And while there are jobs out there, we know that, it's become harder and harder for people to afford health care, right? So you have to be able to afford health care to keep going to work. You have to have roads and bridges and rail that work so you can go to a job. So when I look at how we keep our economy strong, it's taking on those challenges, like making sure we have people trained for the jobs we have tomorrow as well as today. It means making sure that we do something about immigration reform, which is a big part of our country. It means making sure that we address racial injustices so that everyone has an opportunity to compete in this country. It means making sure that we are a country that takes on the challenge of climate change. These are all things that are before us that this president hasn't been grappling with. And I am someone that looks people in the eye and tells them the truth and gets things done. And I think that's what we need in our nation, and that's what we need to move our economy
Senator,
forward.
let me follow up. And I've heard you use that phrase that obviously you don't like how the president runs this administration. You've called it chaotic. If you look at just the numbers, and there's a graphic we'll put up on the screen here,
okay.
The GDP since President Trump took office going up significantly. You have unemployment rate going down to historic numbers. Consumer confidence up big. Average hourly earnings up big. That's since the president took office. What do you say to people, voters in this state, who look at those numbers and say, you know what, I can handle that chaos?
Well, what I say to them is you go out there and you talk to real people, and they tell you they are not sharing in this prosperity. There are some people that have done really well, Brett. There is no doubt about it. But there are a lot of people that can't afford, they still can't afford their prescription drugs, because while this president promised to do something about it, he put a plan out, and all that happened was that the pharmaceutical prices went up for their stocks, not the drugs went down. And so what we need to do is to actually do something about it. And I've got a lot of ideas here, including allowing Medicare to negotiate lower prices for prescription drugs, also making sure that we stop pharma companies from paying generics to keep their products off the market. There is so much we can be doing. And it's about responding to people's concerns instead of passing a tax bill that leaves the young people in this room saddled with $1 trillion in debt.
But Senator, let me ask you
how you seize on this.
Let me ask you about the policies, because one of the things that President Trump has done was the tax reform bill. I know you said you'd like to see an increase in those taxes, the corporate taxes in particular, back up to 25%. A lot of deregulation, and companies say that's what allowed them to grow, that's what allowed them to hire a lot of new workers. So are you concerned that if you dial those things back, you're going to put the brakes on the economy?
I'm not. And first of all, you've got to look at the trajectory we've been on since the downturn. This all didn't just happen when Donald Trump got elected. This started a few years ago when we got on a better track, and it happened because of some incredible businesses, including ones that we have right here in Wisconsin, like Harley-Davidson, right? A homegrown Wisconsin product, workers that did their jobs. So that's the beginning. And it's a trajectory we've been on for a while.
You don't think President Trump had anything to do with it's accelerated?
I go to the tax bill, though.
Sure.
So here's my concern. There are some things in that bill that I would keep. But when you look at what happened with that corporate tax rate, I would have brought it down, but not to 21%. Every point that it went down was $100 billion off of our economy, out of your pockets, $100 billion. And so that's why I think that bill was tilted too far to help the wealthy. I don't know how many people in this room have money stored over in the Bahamas. Could you raise your hand? Okay, well, just not many. And so none. And so to me, the answer is what they did there was it added $150 billion in debt because of the way they did those taxes. So what I want to have is an economy that works for everyone. I would have brought that corporate tax rate down some, but not to where they brought it. And I still think our businesses would be strong. What they want to make sure they have, our businesses, is customers and consumers that can buy stuff. And they're not going to be able to buy stuff, average people, if they don't have the money in their pocket to do it. That is how our economy works.
I mean, you understand this is a big part of this race. how Democrats are going to make the case to voters that you need to get off this track, even though the track is going pretty well. If you look at the Washington Post, they just said a lot of people individually saw tax cuts. You know, there was a myth, a fact check. They did see them individually. So that's part of the
As I
race,
said,
right?
I think for the middle class and for people, there were parts of that bill that I would keep in place. But I'm telling you, we're not going to be able to keep on this track with this kind of debt and not doing anything about our infrastructure and not doing anything about helping people when they need it. And that's why I just put out a policy to finally do something in this country about addiction and mental illness. When 5 out of people in our country are having issues, you have to help people where they are. And people come up to me all the time and say, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. I've worked my whole life, but I can't help my kid go to college. Or I'm struggling in my family because there's addiction. So when you are at a time of prosperity in a country, or at least I will say stability, you have to make sure it works for everyone. That has what made America great.
Let's go to another audience question. This one from Benjamin. Benjamin, there you are.
All right, welcome to the Badger State.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Benjamin, from the Gopher State. We're the only states that love rodents for our name, so go ahead.
So many paint you as a moderate, citing your hesitation to endorse progressive policies like Medicare for All and free public college. But regardless of whether or not these policies are politically feasible in your opinion, do you ideologically support them? And I guess, why should progressives support you?
Thank you. Progressives should support me because I am a proven progressive. The last time I checked, if you want to be a progressive and support progressives, then you're supposed to make progress, all right? And that is what I have done. That is what I have done my whole life. Even during the time of this president, 34 of the bills where I've been the lead Democrat have been signed into law. And there are things like getting money out to our states to improve their election equipment so we don't have what just happened happen again. It is things like, before that, making sure that we respond to drug shortages for kids that have cancer. It is actually also making sure we could build a bridge from Minnesota to Wisconsin, okay? Those are real accomplishments, and that's what I think we need to do. And in terms of those big goals, to me, how do you get to those goals? Well, one goal is universal health care. We all share that, right? Everyone in this country should see health care not as a privilege, but a right. And the way I think you get there, is to build on the Affordable Care Act. Build on the Affordable Care Act. This is something that the president is trying to repeal right now. His Justice Department last week, in the middle of all that news and that Barr hearing, what happened? They filed a legal brief in the Fifth Circuit, and that means the state of Texas, which would have repealed and is trying to repeal the entire Affordable Care Act. This isn't just about people that get health care off the exchanges. This is about all of you. If you have a pre-existing condition, any kind of health condition, you could get kicked off your insurance if, in fact, this repeal takes place. So I would protect those provisions. I would build on them with a public option, which means Medicare or Medicaid, to bring down the costs. This is something President Obama wanted to do from the beginning. And I would take on the pharmaceutical companies, because they may think they own Washington with their 2 lobbyists for every member of Congress, but they don't own me.
We are going to move forward here and take a look at a piece that is about the Wisconsin economy, the impact of the economy on the last election, and the fact that the Badger State, of course, was where we are tonight. The Badger State is going to be very central to 2020 as well. Let's watch this.
It's the state Hillary Clinton forgot in 2016.
Wisconsin, the great state of Wisconsin.
And President Trump's been reminding her of that mistake ever since.
We went to Wisconsin, hadn't been one in many, many years. She decided not to go. Thank you very much, Hillary.
Clinton did not make a single stop in Wisconsin during the 2016 race, partly because the last time the state went for a Republican was in 1984. But it was close in 2004, even closer in 2000, and President Trump won it by the slimmest of margins, just 0.7%.
Fox News projects Donald Trump will win the all-important state of Wisconsin.
He owed it to working-class swing voters, many of whom had supported former President Barack Obama.
What moved me was the economic issues of job creation, lower taxes, a freer economy.
I thought Trump could bring us better off financially.
The swing voters we spoke to say they like the economy under President Trump.
The economy here is booming. We have more jobs than workers.
I know my bank account has more money in it. I do pay less taxes.
But the president's tariffs and trade wars have taken a toll on the state's dairy farmers and on companies reliant on steel and aluminum, like Wisconsin-based Harley-Davidson. Democrats see an opening and are determined to not make the same mistakes.
We're starting in Wisconsin because, as you remember, there wasn't a lot of campaigning in Wisconsin in 2016.
But in 2020, this state is going to be one of the most heavily trafficked swing states in the country. In fact, the Democratic National Convention is going to be held right here in Milwaukee. Brett, Martha?
All right, Kristen, thank you. Obviously, Hillary Clinton is not running this time, but 21 other Democrats are so far, which brings us to our next question from Christina. Christina.
Hi, Amy.
Hi there, Christina.
Today, as a Winona State alumni, I've been following you for a very long time. But outside of the state of Minnesota, name recognition is a big issue that you're facing. What are you doing to face this head-on and overcome this?
Sure. I'm here. Let's start with that. And what I love about a presidential campaign is you can get out there and you can meet people and you can talk to people and they get to know you. And that is how I've run all my campaigns, and that's actually how I govern. I go not just where it is comfortable, but where it's uncomfortable. And when I look back, I'd like to note for the record, first of all, I think that Hillary Clinton would have been a very good president. Okay, so let's start with that. Secondly, I do think, as we look in the last few years, in some of the national campaigns, that the Midwest got forgotten. My husband is here, and he is one of 6 boys, and he grew up actually, for the first years of his life, they were in a trailer home, and they would get to go on one vacation every summer, and they'd load the boys into the station wagon, and his mom is a great mom, and she'd always want to make sure they didn't want to leave one behind, so they'd make them count off when they got in that car, so they didn't leave a boy behind at the gas station. And we are not going to leave, with me in the lead, we're not leaving the Midwest behind at the gas station. Okay, so let's start with that. And that is because I think it is critical, which is one of the reasons I'm here today, to talk about the entire country. I think it's important to run on an optimistic economic agenda. And if you think that doesn't work in Wisconsin, I have 4 words for you. Former Governor Scott Walker, okay? Because that is what your new governor did. That is what Tammy Baldwin has done, your great senator, running on things that matter to the people of Wisconsin. And yes, Donald Trump in the 2016 election, and he continues to do it, tries to take you down every single rabbit hole every day. He tweets out mean things in the morning. That's what he does. And I think it's important to keep on track. Sometimes you respond to him and hold your ground. When he took on my friend Senator McCain 8 months after he died, yeah, you respond. Sometimes you ignore him, and sometimes, if you haven't noticed, you use a little humor. Like when he called me Snow Woman at my announcement in the middle of that thing, I wrote back on Twitter, I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard, Mr.
Senator, you know, Joe Biden is essentially running in the same lane as you, as a more moderate Democrat. Joe Biden, in the average of recent polls, is beating you 39-1. Okay. So how do you beat Joe Biden?
Well, this is going to be a long campaign, and we're all going to be able to make our cases. And when you look at presidents that have won, you look at where they came from, they have all overcome incredible odds. Do you think that anyone thought a peanut farmer from Georgia was going to become the president? He was like at 1% for a long, long time. He became president. A governor from Arkansas, or how about someone with the name Barack Obama? I don't think people thought he was going to win. And if I would use that philosophy in my life, if I thought to myself, oh, well, everyone that discounted me, that I'm not going to be able to do it, I would never be where I am today. When our daughter was born and she was really sick and I got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours, I went to the legislature, and this was before a lot of these laws passed, just as a mom, and I went to the legislature when no one thought I could do it and passed one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. When I ran for prosecutor, no woman ever had that job. Ran for prosecutor of the biggest county in Minnesota. I did it, and against all odds with a more well-funded opponent, I won. Then when I ran for the U.S. Senate, we'd never had a woman in that job, and I went all over the state, again with less money, and I won that too. And when I got to the Senate, I thought, okay, maybe I got a little different background than some of these people, but I'm going to build trust with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and I'm going to get things done. So literally, if you discounted people that don't look like they have a chance, these people I just mentioned wouldn't have been president, and we would have never been where we are today. So yeah, I can win this.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, let's go back to the audience for another question. This question is from Connor Mathias. Connor?
Do you think early negative coverage of your campaign was sexist?
You know, that is going to be for other people to decide. And I think you've just got to run your own race and make your case to the people of this country. There's going to be all kinds of coverage you don't like. And I don't think the world is always fair. And I'm sure I'll have time to say that at some point in my life. But right now, I think it's more important to talk about what I actually want to do. And we've mentioned a few of these things, but I did want to talk about one of the things that I didn't get into as much. And that is my policy to actually do something about addiction and mental health. And for me, this comes from the heart. My dad struggled with drinking the whole time I was growing up. He had 2 DWIs by the time I was in middle school. And when John and I were about to get married in the 90s, he got a 3rd one. And that time the laws had changed, and he faced jail or he faced treatment. And he, with our urging, with me telling him everything that happened in my life and taking the keys away from him when he was trying to drive when he shouldn't have, he picked treatment. And in his own words, he was pursued by grace. And I believe that every person in this country has that right to be pursued by grace if they've got problems with an addiction, whether it's opioids, whether it's meth that hits so many of our communities right now again, or whether they have a problem with mental illness. And that's why I put out a plan that's paid for. I put out a plan that shows how you can get there. We don't have enough beds in this country right now for people with mental illness to get treatment. And in fact, our police officers show up at the door and they also have to be a doctor at the same time. And so I think the best thing is to get help for people that have mental illness and to make sure that you've got suicide. I don't know if you know this, with Wisconsin being such a big ag state, but we've seen this big increase in suicides from farmers. You've lost in this state something like 1,400 dairy farms, right? And I've got a farmer in Minnesota whose wife, they were struggling. They were going to lose their farm. They were soybean farmers. And she didn't know how bad it was, but he killed himself. And that's happening across this country. Veterans are committing suicides at record rates right in front of veterans facilities. We've had a 30% increase in suicides in this country in just 15 years. And so that's why this idea that we make sure that we have help for people, that we have the personnel, that we train them, that we do something when it comes to suicide, that's what counts to me. So when you ask me, do I care about news coverage? No. I care about the people that need help in this country.
Well, Senator, let me just ask you one question about that issue of sexism, because I just want to follow up on that for a second. As you said, there was some early coverage that wasn't flattering about treatment of staff, and then you have this issue of likability, and you look at the way things are right now, and you've got 3 men at the top of the polls, and then the women. And even a recent poll that Democrat women said that they felt like they should vote for a man this time. What do you think when you hear that?
I think may the best woman win. That's what I think. I think that you have women that have gotten elected all over the country. The new governor of Kansas is a woman. She beats Chris Kobach, right? Her name's Laura Kelly. We have elected women in House seats all over the country. You have the great Tammy Baldwin here. So women won all kinds of elections. I also think you discount them at your own peril if you're a Democratic voter, because we have some really outstanding women running. And yes, did I have a tough job as a prosecutor, and am I forthright and push to get things done and have high standards for myself and for my staff and for our country? Yes, I do. And I think that when you do those kinds of things and you have the kind of jobs that a few of us that are running, the women that are running, have had, yeah, you make some enemies. Not everyone loves you, but that's not your job. Your job is to do what's right for this country.
Thank you, Senator. We have a lot more questions from the audience coming up. That now infamous exchange between Senator Klobuchar and Supreme Court Justice now Brett Kavanaugh. That plus more of the audience questions as we come to you live from the Grain Exchange here in downtown Milwaukee. We'll be right back.
Do you want a charge?
Thank you.
What you think of me now? Oh, how you like that? So nice. How you like that? What you think of me now? How you like that? What you think of me now?
With my hepatitis C, I felt I couldn't be at my best for my family. In only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured and left those doubts behind.
I faced reminders of my hep C every day, but in only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured.
Even hanging with friends, I worried about my hep C, but in only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured.
Mavyret is the only 8-week cure for all common types of hep C. Before starting Mavyret, your doctor will test if you've had hepatitis B, which may flare up and cause serious liver problems during and after treatment. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B, a liver or kidney transplant, other liver problems, HIV-1, or other medical conditions, and all medicines you take, including herbal supplements. Don't take Mavyret with atazanavir or rifampin, or if you've had certain liver problems. Common side effects include headache and tiredness.
With hep C behind me, I feel free.
Fearless.
And there's no looking back, because I am cured.
Talk to your doctor about Mavyret.
You might